So way back in college, one of the things I studied was religion. I've always had a fascination with religion and cults and spirituality, the paranormal, things of that nature. And I happened to pick up one of my old college textbooks recently titled World Religions, Eastern Traditions. And wow, was it far cheaper than I remember when I was in college. I don't remember the price then, but I can tell you I picked up this bad boy for about $5, which I think is a great deal. Now I figure it could be interesting to actually discuss some of these religions from the book. For time's sake, I only picked 3, maybe I'll do more in later videos, but for now I just picked the first 3. I grew up Christian, I left the faith, and I'm currently an agnostic atheist. So the religions we will be discussing are not ones that I have or ever have currently practiced. If religions were a belt in karate, I'd say I'm a white belt, which is to say that I am nowhere near an expert. So feel free to fact check me, and especially if you are part of any of these religions, please call me out if I end up misrepresenting anything. I may be the teacher here in this video, but I will always be a student as well. So let's begin with Hinduism. For this one, I'm using the old college textbook, World Religions, Eastern Tradition, and I'm using this to form the base of the video. It has a chapter on Hinduism, and I'm using that chapter. I'm also using Cogitos' video, Hinduism Explained, to back up and double check my basic work. It's a good video, and I recommend checking it out. Hinduism is one of the oldest religions around, and it was used by the British to describe the religions within the Sindh region that were not Christian, Jew, or Muslim. Now, not everyone in the region, which is currently Pakistan, believed the same things, but they were still placed under the umbrella term Hinduism, which is why it is a bit difficult to describe it. Even many Hindus might not refer to themselves as Hindu. They might refer to themselves as their caste or their community or a denomination or a sect. Because of this, Hinduism is less than one single tradition and more of many different traditions under the umbrella term Hinduism. Different Hindus may worship different gods, they may use different texts, or they may have different beliefs from another group. The beliefs of Hinduism are diverse. The 3 main deities we have Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, and these are genderless supreme beings. Brahma, despite being one of the Trinity godheads, is not actually worshipped, whereas the other 2 are. While he is seen as the creator god, he also seems to be more of an agent of either Vishnu, Shiva, or one other god who I haven't mentioned yet. Brahma lives 311 trillion 40 billion years, and then he dies and is reborn. Next up is Vishnu. Vishnu is a wildly worshipped one. I say he, but gods in Hinduism are genderless. So he, she, they, it all works. He also comes to Earth in different incarnations. In the equivalent of Hindu's Noah's Ark story, he comes to a man named Manu as a fish that grows bigger and bigger and tells Manu about the great flood and to build a boat. He incarnates himself as animals or people to try to fight evil in the world. He is said to have 10 incarnations, and already 9 of them have happened. Rama and Krishna are some of the incarnations that are more popular, and even some say the Buddha is one. Next is Shiva, the destroyer, and while that does sound bad, in Hinduism it isn't. It is more of a cycle ending and the new one beginning. Here, creation, preservation, and destruction are not 3 separate things, but they are actually one thing in just different parts of a cycle. Now, despite not being in the Trinity, the real big 3 worshipped are Vishnu, Shiva, and Shiva's wife, Parvati. She is also known as Devi, or just plain the goddess. Other popular gods include Ganesha. He's this elephant-headed god, the son of Shiva and Parvati, and he is the remover of obstacles. And Sarasvati, who is a goddess not tied to any other male and is all about knowledge and learning. She has libraries and is known for arts and education. Now, I can't go through all the gods because there is a lot of them. How many are there? Well, the answer is confusing. As seen in this quote from one of the Upanishads, it seems like the answer is a lot and a little at the same time. So the actual answer, we don't know, but that's okay because while this is a religion with many gods, I don't think they really consider themselves polytheistic. Instead, believing that all these gods are part of the one true god, Brahman, which is not to be confused with Brahma. Now, many followers have one main god they follow and then some secondary gods, which could even be local gods. So what one person might follow can be vastly different from the others, but that does not mean that they don't see the others as important either. It's not like they say, well, because I follow Vishnu, I don't care about Shiva. No, they still do. So what is their equivalent to the Bible? It turns out that they don't have one. They do have a lot of important texts, though. The most important being the Vedas. There are 4 Vedas, each containing 4 parts. These Vedas include mantras, hymns, rituals, ceremonies, and more, and all have a Upanishad, which is a philosophical work to really explain and dissect the stuff within the Vedas, which I think is actually really cool. Despite the Vedas being important, the average Hindu will not have a copy of the Vedas in their home. See, there are people called the Brahmin, with an I-N, not to be confused with Brahmin with an A-N or Brahma. Well, they sound the same, the spellings are different, and they are different things, although you could say they are all part of Brahmin, which I won't though because I don't want us to get confused, so I'll lay this out. Brahmin with an A-N is everything. Brahma with no N is a god. Brahmin with an I-N is a priest. And I hope that explains it. Anyway, for a long time, Brahmin, the priests, were the only one allowed to teach the Vedas. Castes lower could read, but not teach, except for the caste of the servant caste. To my understanding, it is no longer that way. However, there are for sure some old school folk who I'm sure live this way. Another important text is the Ramayana, which is the story of Rama, one of the Vishnu incarnations. Prince Rama's father gives up his throne to the prince, but on that day he sadly has to exile his son for 14 years due to a promise he made to one of his wives. So Rama, his wife, and his half-brother all leave to the forest. Rama's blood brother returns to the kingdom and he finds out Rama's been exiled and his father died from being upset about the events. So he goes to the forest and he's like, yo, can you please come back? But Rama is like, nah, I'm going to respect my dad's wishes. You can be the regent though. But then Rama's wife gets kidnapped by an evil demon king, so he teams up with Hanuman, who is this mystical monkey guy, and him and an army of monkeys go after the demon king. Rama wins, kills the demon king, and saves his wife. And then after the 14 years are up, he returns to the kingdom to become king. Another epic is the Mahabharata. This is a massive poem, the largest in the world, and while a lot of people don't have the full thing, what they do have is a portion of it, known as the Bhagavad Gita. I actually went and bought it with the intent to read it, or portions of it, for this video. I have read portions of it before back when I was in college, but I wanted to brush up. But what I actually bought for me now instead was the Bhagavad Gita as it is, which according to the Hinduism subreddit is not something I should have done. And yes, while I'm aware, Reddit, not a good source for citing. However, it kept popping up to me during my fact-checking, and I at least think it's helpful to see how people within the group would feel. And I would wager a good number of the Hindu subreddit are probably Hindu, so I didn't want to do things to misrepresent. I guess the Bhagavad Gita as it is not a great one for beginners, and gets real opinion based. And so what they said I would actually want was the Gita Press Gita. Fortunately, someone already asked all these questions, so I didn't have to waste my time doing that, but yeah. I don't want to use the wrong Gita for this video, so instead, I am describing what my textbook says, and any quotes from it I show on the screen are directly from the textbook, which is quoting the Gita. This is the story of a king who was at war with his cousins. A huge battle is taking place. Krishna, who is an incarnation of Vishnu, is the chariot driver for a warrior named Arjuna. And Arjuna is really good in battle, but he is stressing about this battle. Not because he doesn't think he can win, but because now he has to fight his own relatives. He's panicking and talking to Krishna about what to do. And Krishna's sort of like, well, you gotta try to be peaceful at first. But if that isn't an option, then we fight for what's right. And the Bhagavad Gita is the portion where Krishna and Arjuna are talking it out. And I remember this one in particular because Krishna goes into this talk where he basically says that the soul is undying, and when he kills them, they are simply reborn, like someone getting rid of old clothes to get new ones. They will be reborn again, and he will have done what's right. And I specifically remember that because I heard it in class and was like, oh snap, that sounds like a very scary reasoning that could be used to justify horrible atrocities. That as a non-religious person, I felt it was a scary thing to say, but that was just my personal opinion. The Puranas are also important, and there is a bunch of them. The main takeaway here is that there isn't one singular text Hindus follow. In Hinduism, there is a caste system. And well, this does apply to Hinduism, it just kind of applies to everything within the regions. Even the Christians in the area might be part of it, from what I understand. There are 4 castes called the Varnas, and they are even mentioned in the Vedas when the Supreme Being is creating the world. In verse 12 of the hymn to the Supreme Being, it states, "From his mouth came the priestly caste, from his arms the rulers. The producers came from his legs, and from his feet the servant class." The highest class is the Brahmins. These are those priests we talked about earlier, and that's Brahmin with I-N. The next class is the rulers and warriors, and this even includes kings, which is interesting, having the priests be above the kings. Next is the merchants, and this includes most people. If it's commercial or agriculture, it really doesn't matter. If you're selling something or work for someone who's selling something, you are in that class. Last off is the servants. They're not allowed to gain wealth, and their life revolves around serving those in the castes higher than them. There are also the untouchables, which are mainly very sick people or people who work with gross, unclean things, like dead bodies, animal parts, or sewage, and these people can be treated absolutely terribly. The goal is to live a good life within your caste, and in the next you will be reborn into a higher caste. I absolutely despise this. I think it's a gross way to keep people trapped in place from ever progressing in their life too far. I think it's bad for the poor, good for the rich, and causes too much discrimination. If a man married a woman from a lower caste, that's fine, but if a woman married a man from a lower caste, not only would it not be fine, but all their kids would be untouchables. Now, I will say, this is no longer law as of the 1950s, however, castes still exist, discrimination still exists, and despite there being bans against it, it is part of the culture. However, in parts away from India, it seems the caste system really does not matter as much to Hinduism. Also, it seems the caste system didn't start off this way, and had originally been something closer to a be what you are good at system, until the laws of Manu came out, which seemed to really create and enforce laws surrounding the whole religion. Well, I am calling out saying I think the caste system is bad. This isn't me saying Hinduism is bad. There's a lot of Hindus who also dislike the caste system. I just am stating my opinion. When we banned slavery in America, racism didn't just vanish. A caste ban isn't going to remove that caste culture overnight. That's not how it works. Karma is a term I feel like is well known enough here that there's no need to explain it, but just in case I will, it's this reward and punishment system based upon your actions. It's not really people doing the rewarding and punishing, but the universe doing it. And in Hinduism, this really doesn't end at death, because it ties into reincarnation. This death and rebirth happening repeatedly is known as samsara. Your karma will affect your next life as you can move up or down in caste, status, etc. Hell, you can even be a plant or an animal, or a much higher or much lower caste, all depending upon your karma. And your dharma, which is sort of your duty as a person, based on the position you are in. The end goal of samsara is to achieve moksha, which ends the samsara and you become enlightened, immortal. Moksha isn't really heaven, it's not really a place, it's just reaching such a high level of enlightenment. You are free from samsara, you are one with Brahman, and you are immortal. We are known as the Atman. That means every human soul is the Atman, and this extends to animal souls as well. The supreme being is Brahman, that's with an A-N, and Brahman is less of a person, more of an existence of consciousness in which we cannot understand until we reach a higher enlightenment. Brahman is everything. Brahman and Atman are still connected though, and are sort of the same thing. In this one Upanishad, a father tells his son to dissolve salt into water, and then goes on to describe how that's how Brahman and Atman are. What exactly this means, I think, can be debated, but what I think it's supposed to be getting at is that while salt and water are different, when dissolved they are connected in the same, if that makes sense. So as the Atman, we are still connected to the Brahman, and to fully become one with the Brahman, even though we are already still connected to him, we must obtain moksha. So how does one achieve moksha and end the cycle of samsara? Krishna describes 3 ways of liberation. The first is the way of action, unselfishly being good without fear of punishment or hope of reward. So in this case, even if you are doing good for reward, you are still doing bad because you are being selfish. The second is the way of knowledge. Gaining so much wisdom and insight, you go beyond your past karma. And the third is the way of devotion. If we surrender and devote ourselves to Krishna, he will forgive our sins. Hinduism has temples where they go to worship and do rituals. There is even one in my city, which makes me very happy that there's some diversity here, even if it's not as much as I would like. Hindus also perform rituals at home as well, and many have a small space for doing so with just a little shrine. Food is super important in the Hindu culture, lots of festivals and feasts, and there are times for fasting and lots of rules around food. They are even used in some of the rituals. Festivals are big in Hindu culture. You got ones going on every month of every year. Specifically, I remember Diwali, which is the Fest of Lights, and also was featured in one of the episodes of The Office. Om is the sacred syllable recited at the beginning and end of prayers in Hinduism, and also carries over to some other Eastern religions as well as Buddhism. There's a lot of debates on its meaning, but it seems to be pretty well accepted as the most sacred sound and is a good thing and not a bad thing. Now let's address some misconceptions, starting with the swastika. This isn't just tied to Hinduism, but with other Eastern religions and just India in general, and has been around since far before the Nazis. And yes, it is currently associated with the Nazis, and it can be debated upon whether the symbol should be used anymore, but the big point is it was stolen by the Nazis, it was changed by the Nazis, and if you see this symbol on someone from the East, chances are they're most likely not a Nazi. Project Shivoham has a video called The Untold Story of the Swastika, which makes a pretty good breakdown on it, and he also does many videos on Hinduism in India in general, so if you want to check him out for more, I recommend it. Next is sati. This is the practice of having a widow throw herself in her dead husband's grave to be buried with him. This is no longer a widely practiced thing. That isn't to say it never happens, just that it is rare and it's more likely to presently be covered under suicide rather than sati. One of the more popular, closer to modern ones was Rup Kanwar, who in 1987 burned herself alive on her husband's grave. This was highly discussed, with some believing she was forced to and others believing she wanted to. I tried to watch 3 different videos on it, all in a language I don't speak, and came away with this conclusion: I don't understand what was said. Anyway, for obvious reasons, sati is not widely practiced and is controversial. Next up is bindis, which is the forehead mark married Hindu women wear. It turns out there are many other reasons to wear them. It goes far beyond Hinduism. It's best to think of them as a decoration or like jewelry, like a ring. Sure, a ring can mean something significant, or it could just be a ring. A bindi could describe what religion you are in, it could indicate a marriage, or it could be a decoration. It's best to just ask if you're unsure. And last up is arranged marriages. Yes, they do still happen, and yes, some poorly arranged marriages still do happen. However, not all arranged marriages are seen as bad, and often it is seen as a good thing. And once again, this is less of a Hinduism thing and more of an India thing. It really depends on the people and the family. And while I personally am not big into them, as long as both parties being married consent and they're happy, then why the hell not? Let's now move into the next religion now. Sikhism. Unlike Hinduism, which is one of the oldest religions, Sikhism is a far newer religion, being less than 600 years old. And to help me along, I have my World Religions Eastern Traditions textbook and its section on Sikhism, as well as Cogito's video called Sikhism Explained. And how cool is that he had a video on this one too? This was not planned at all. That's cool. Sikhism can be all over the place, but a good chunk of them reside in the Punjab region. The supreme being, who goes by many different names, is a genderless and formless being. This god is not separate from the other religions, but is the same god that all the other religions believe in. Christ, Vishnu, Allah, all the same God in their eyes, and that God is a formless, genderless God, often called Akal Paruk. Hope I pronounced that right. Now this next part, take with a grain of salt, because my source here is the Sikhism Reddit, but one guy asked, why even be a Sikh if all religions have the same God? To which the top answer said something along the lines of, well, this doesn't mean all religions lead to the same place. Sikhism is still the correct one. It just means we think you have the correct God, just the wrong religion and beliefs, if that makes sense. Again, take that part with a grain of salt, as I wouldn't call Reddit the most accurate of sources. Back to better sources. The most holy book is the Adi Granth. These are hymns, prayers, and musical patterns from 6 of the 10 gurus, and 15 saint poets, and 15 Sikh bards. Other works important to Sikhism include the Dasam Granth, which is a collection of hymns, devotions, and other writings. This was written at the time of the 10th guru. Sikh Rehat is a third, which is a code of conduct by the SGPC, which some Sikhs follow and some don't. These were made way after the 10 gurus, and due to them being from the SGCP, Sikhs have varying opinions on them. The SGCP seems to be a divisive group in Sikhism, and some people like them and some don't. I'm not nearly educated enough on that subject at this time to give an opinion or even explain why it's divisive, because I really don't know. The last book is Janam Sakhi, and these are some of Guru Nanak's birth stories. These are less of historical and fall more into like a mythological category. But I suppose we should talk about the gurus now. Guru Nanak was the guru who started Sikhism. The story goes he grew up surrounded by Hinduism and Islam, and one day while bathing in a river he vanished. For 3 days, no one could find him. Then he suddenly pops up out of the water and exclaims, "There is no Hinduism, there is no Muslim." He saw that all religions actually had the same God and just didn't realize it. Following him were 9 other gurus, each who did their own thing to add and grow the Sikh religion. It ended at the 10th guru in 1708, and he closed the Sikh canon and ended the line of gurus. Sort of. He kind of like made the Sikh canon the 11th guru, as just like this endless, timeless guru to teach. Now, for most of the life of the first 5 gurus, things were peaceful, but the 5th guru was executed by the new emperor of the Mughals. This caused a change in Sikhism, where they no longer felt at peace, and now there was an obvious change, as the 6th guru carried with him 2 swords. Sikhs didn't back down to the Mughals and took up arms and fought back. There were many battles and tensions were slowly going down, but shot right back up again when the 9th guru was also executed for refusing to convert to Islam. The 10th guru thought some people were afraid to be seen as Sikhs because of this death, and the 9th guru had just died for being a Sikh, so he was probably right. So the 10th guru created the Khalsa, which were warriors who would have specific things on them at all times, so you knew they were Sikh and proud. The Khalsa men were called lions, and the women were called princess. Khalsa also refers to some modern-day Sikhs as well, even if not warriors, but they have the same 5 physical symbols the Khalsa army did, which include long, uncut hair. If you are a male, that also includes a turban. A wooden comb, this is for taking care of your hair. A kirpan, this used to be a sword, but many today carry a very small dagger instead. A steel wrist ring that represents God's eternity. And they have special underwear. Now this one I think is weird because people aren't going to see that, so isn't the point of wearing these 5 to be like, hey, these are the 5 that represent I'm a Sikh. But this one is to remind them to stay sexually pure. Sikhism has gurdwaras, which are their places of worship, and what's cool is they have this thing called a langar, which is this big meal they share with everyone. Doesn't matter your wealth, gender, or caste, everyone sits together and is equal, and I think that is super cool. Now, this wasn't invented by the Sikhs, but it has become a huge part of Sikhism. In fact, Sikhism is very against the caste system altogether and really emphasize equality. They also believe women and men are equals. Sikhism is primarily about equality and anti-corruption. Now, just because these are the core principles of Sikhism doesn't mean the culture doesn't seep in. Castes are still big in India, and women still have very traditional roles, and within Sikhism, it's still mostly men in leadership roles. But the core principles of equality are in Sikhism, and I hope it continues to evolve more and more. Sikhs also are very big into justice and anti-corruption. They take it very seriously if a ruler takes a bribe or does something that hurts the people. Also, just because they carry a kirpan doesn't mean they attack people. The kirpan is more for defense. It's important to try to work things out with words first before getting to the point of violence. Karma and samsara are still here. These are called karm and sansar. And moksha is still a thing. It is called mukti. Now, they do believe their one true God can override karma, as his grace is more important. There is no pastor or priest. They have a reader whose job it is to not only take good care of the scriptures, but also to read them out loud. They do have musical worship and celebrate festivals, including Diwali, although they celebrate it for different reasons than the Hindus. For Hindus, it's more related to the gods. For Sikhs, it's more about a historical event. Both have a lot of pretty candles, though. And as for misconceptions, the one I really know about, and it's really I think the only one I know about off the top of my head, is Sikhs aren't Muslim. Yes, they have a turban, but they aren't Muslim. They are their own thing. Alright, On to the next religion. So Jainism is a religion I have been mispronouncing since I learned of it. I called it Jainism because that's how I remember my professor saying it, but it is actually Jainism. I wanted to reach out to my old religion professors for this video to get clarification on a couple things, but not only do they not work there anymore, but apparently none of my old professors do, which is wild to me, but I suppose that comes with getting older and older. Nothing ever stays the same, sadly. So once again, I will be using my World Religions Eastern Traditions textbook, and once again, I will be using a Cogito video called Jainism Explained. The fact this dude covered all the religions I'm covering today, as well as others I plan to cover in the future, I love it. I hadn't planned that out at all, it just worked. So as usual, we start off with who is the god of Jainism, and the answer is there is no god, none at all. Some may worship a Hindu god, but for the most part, a creator god is not in their beliefs. What they do have is the 24 Tirthankaras. These are the teachers who managed to escape samsara. There are more than 24, but they focus on the 24. And while they may sometimes worship the Tirthankaras, it is different in the sense of they know the Tirthankaras aren't going to be communicating back or blessing them or anything like that, because they are already detached from this world. Rather, when they do so, it is more about admiration of the Tirthankaras and wanting to get where they are and learn the lessons that they taught. Once again, karma, samsara, moksha, all here again, but also slightly different. Now, this is no longer about enlightenment. It is about escape. Being trapped in samsara, which is the cycle of reincarnation, is not a great thing to Jainism. They don't see the world as this illusionary spiritual thing to open your third eye and see clearly. They see the world as a place where actual pain and suffering exists and all of it is real. And with no God, the only way to escape samsara is to get rid of all that negative karma. Death is seen as a good thing and is even celebrated. And as for their Bible holy book thing, they don't have one. They believe it was lost long ago. Now they do, of course, have books they think are important, and even texts that some claim come from those old authoritative texts, but some also don't. And one very important thing to remember is that Jainism is kind of separated. So the two big separations each have their own thoughts on what texts are important, but they do share a lot of core beliefs. A big reason for this as well, it started off as one, is it eventually broke off into two, and they were both isolated from each other for a long time. So the basic core fundamentals have remained the same, but there are very big differences as well. Our two groups are the sky-clad and the white-clad. The biggest and most apparent difference is clothing of monks. The sky-clad, also called naked-clad, are just that. Naked, whereas white-clad wear clothes. Why the difference? Let me explain things a little more before I get into that. There are homeowners and renouncers. Homeowners are just your everyday person practicing Jainism, which is most of Jainism. The reclaimers are your monks. They are monks attempting the ultimate karma cleanse. Their whole life revolves around cleansing karma. They also believe all living things and things that could become living are super important, and hurting them even accidentally could cause bad karma. And I mean all living things, bugs, plants, and microbes included. Even things I wouldn't think to include, like water and fire. Non-violence is so important in Jainism that renouncers won't walk on grass, and they carry special brooms to sweep in front of them as they walk so they don't accidentally hurt a bug or a flower or something. They are non-violent and don't believe in interfering with any violence around them either. This also means they don't use electricity, they don't flush toilets, they don't cook food, and they don't have a home. Now, the big reason the monks are even able to live this way is because of the homeowners. To be a homeowner is not a bad thing. To Jainism, it is a necessary thing. A homeowner lives their life the way we all do, jobs, taking care of living areas, etc., and they are allowed to cook. In fact, they take the same vows as the monks to a lesser degree. For example, the monks can't cook, but the homeowner can't cook some things like fish or eggs, but they can still cook. And while the homeowners know they are always getting negative karma, they also have ways to minimize it, and they know that at some point in the samsara cycle they will end up becoming a monk. Both are very careful in actions and speech as to not cause harm. Now for monks, non-attachment to possessions is also very important. They want to be separated from the world as much as possible. And this wearing of clothes thing, the skyclads see that as an attachment to possession, while the whiteclads say no, you can have some basic things like clothes without being attached to them. So clothing and doctrine are two big differences, but there's more, like women. Skyclad says women can't be monks. We can't have them running around naked. They also think women are inferior and weak. The whiteclad says, we wear clothes so it's chill if women are monks. We still think they're inferior and weak though. Skyclad believe you can surpass bodily needs and you don't need things like food or sleep. Whiteclad says, no, we still need clothes and food and sleep. Jainism has not only a lot of meditation, but also a lot of fasting, and a long time fasting. There's this thing called salakana, where they fast until they die. This is seen as a good thing and not suicide. And this isn't doing anything but fasting to death. It's a huge karma cleanser. This is not just done by monks, but also by homeowners. This isn't an everyone does it kind of thing, but it's common enough. There are 5 vows the monks take: non-harm, truthfulness, non-stealing, celibacy, and non-possession/attachment. Now that does not mean homeowners can't have possessions, as they can. They could even be quite wealthy as long as it is ethical and benefits their society. Jainism also has festivals including Diwali, once again, though once again they celebrate the festive lights for a different reason as well. What this means is if you see someone celebrating Diwali, it's not safe to assume they're Hindu. In fact, what I've learned in my research from this video, it's not safe to assume anything, ever. Anyway, wrapping up, I think Jainism sounds really stressful to me. To constantly be thinking about karma and its negative effects feels like that would take a lot of mental power and discipline. I saw this somewhere, and I think it may be in the comments of a video. If I find it, I'll put it on the screen, but it said something to the effect of, the more extremist a Jain is, the more peaceful they are, the more you don't gotta worry about them, and I thought that was kind of funny. Also, they use a symbol with a swastika, but once again, it has nothing to do with Nazis, and is before the Nazis even began. Cogitos' video breaks down the symbol really well, and I think what's cool about his videos is, well, similar, they're also very different from mine, as he discusses things that I don't. I highly recommend both this textbook and his videos. Anyway, that was kind of fun. I don't know when, but I'll probably go over 3 more religions in the future. And again, if you are in any of these communities, feel free to add things I didn't say or correct me if I got anything wrong. Not only is it important for me to learn, but also if I got something wrong, it's important that I know so I don't spread misinformation in any future videos. Also, what do you think of this new animation? You like it? I think I'll have this play instead of my big old dumb head on the screen, as I think that's what I'm gonna do.